Now, I'm going to ask Air Commodore Gregory Frasina to come forward. We've got an opportunity now to hear from Greg, or Fritz, as he's universally known. Been involved in a wide range of Air Force initiatives around improving pilot training, the setting up of the Aviation Academy. Recently was Director of Personnel within Air Force, has only recently moved across to the reserve component and is really the inaugural Director General Reserves Air Force. So Fritz, great to have you with us today, and we really look forward to hearing from you about the initiatives in Air Force.
Thanks very much. You got the slideshow? Yep, we got it.
Take them away.
That's good. That's all good. I've learnt today, never be the last defence speaker, because just about everyone has said what you needed to say, right? But every cloud has a silver lining. I've also learnt that if I run out of money, CJC always underspends. So just pop on over there. Thanks all for the opportunity to speak to you today about Air Force and how we look after the amalgam into a Chief of PERS organisation. I thought I'd take you for a spin of what Air Force looks like now from a reserve perspective, and the things we're trying to do inside of PERS branch to support reserves. Similar issues to Navy, as you'll find out along the way. I thought I'd start firstly with Air Commodore Hindmarsh left you last year. I think he had one slide he was allowed to present, and these were the 4 points he gave you. We do talk, so I'm letting you know that he just hasn't walked out the door and left it all behind for me to pick up, so to speak. We are talking. He took the WD piece with him to Military Workforce Design Division and left the R's. I said R, not... he left the R behind for me to pick up, right? So the first dot point there, designing a structure based on CERCAT 3.5, etc. across the total workforce system. We are already doing that inside Air Force. So you'll see CERCAT 3 and 5 at the helm, with CERCAT 6 and 7 as the daytime, pick up the phone, get the information, and then direct the work out as required. The second and third dot points, not so much. Not a lot of traction over the last year, with the fourth one being our new structures. The current hollowness allows for a lot of opportunity for reservists or CERCAT 3 and 4, 5 to undertake duty. I thought we only had 1,000 CFTS on option, but listening to Lieutenant General Fox today, to discover it was 1,500. And we could certainly fill our work with anyone else. Grandchildren, children, come serve. Yeah. Why would you go Navy? Like my eldest son. Yeah. No, we were. We are doing well. So what do we look like now? It's the work group and culture branch inside of Air Force. CERCAT 5 at the top of the helm. Don't even know who my new boss is yet. That's being decided at the moment, being signed off by CDF. I don't know how many days that person's going to have. DG Res sits off the side of that 1-star, and I report direct to another 1-star. Quite happy with that. One man and a dog, though. With me is 106 in support, and we share that headquarters that sits underneath. The COS, the DCOS and the category plans are the CERCAT 7 people, and they will pick up the phone during the day and hand out the work that is required to be done by both DG Res and from a work group perspective. All the other things underneath are all CERCAT 5 or APS. So the Director of Workforce Aviation, that's specialising mental health and wellbeing, APS, behaviour and culture, as well as Defence Honours and Awards, all CERCAT 5 roles. We're still refining what duties each of those departments will pick up, but essentially that's what DG Res is. It's no longer a huge organisation. It's one person with 06 support and a support staff behind that. On the right-hand side is missing DG Chap. So the chaplains were also going to be inside the culture branch. They were going to report to the 1-star. They're not doing that. They're going to report direct to DCAF now. So if you meet with DCAF, AVM Harvey Reynolds, and he's a little godlike, It's because all the chaplains are reporting to him. I then thought I'd touch on the things that Air Force is doing in order to try and fix it. This is mainly inside the PERS branch. DG Res has some influence advocating for what Air Force should do and how we should do it. But essentially, as it spells out there, and as you saw from the Lieutenant General today, all of PERS management, cradle to grave, is done inside her organisation. And DG Res, Air Force, doesn't actually manage people at all. The workforce design has gone over military design, military workforce design division. And again, we don't have much control in what we actually look like. What we are trying to do though is create these new constructs so that they get all the admin side of the house, and I get to do the flag waving duties, so to speak. So inside organisations like this, listening to you, telling you what we're doing. Inside IRs, which is the International Air Reserves. So that's countries like UK, US, France, Germany. Discussions with them about what their air forces are doing from a reserve perspective. We'll touch a little bit more on the UK piece later on, because again, some interesting stuff coming out of there. Interesting stuff coming out of the French. Yours was a two-week reserve course. The French have got a 12-day reserve course to create airfield protection flights. 12 days, bring them in the door, put a uniform on them, teach them how to shoot a gun, and a bit of the safety aspects of it, and they come back for 14 days per annum to keep themselves current on the rifle. The Joint Reserve Working Group sit with the good Major General in discussion what it looks like from an ADF perspective, but also from a combined perspective with the Kiwis. The Prince of Wales Awards, Air Force don't have a lot to play in this space. Primarily, as you saw before, a lot of our people roll out of CERCAT 7 into 3 and 5 and don't actually have employers. It's the fill-in job that tops up the pension, so to speak. So we don't get too much involvement. Where I think a lot of my work will be done is on the bottom one, it's the employer support program. We keep on talking about our relationship from a reserve perspective and the workforce scarcity on how that workforce is going to be shared. And I'll be interested to talk a little bit more, as I said before, about how the UK is starting to look at their problem. What have we done inside the reserve space from a management and careers management point of view? For the first time ever, we now have a dedicated 05 that looks after the recruitment of reserves. As I said, career, not the actual management, postings, etc., but career and then the transition out. So we now have a dedicated person. We also have reserve managers inside of the PERS branch. That is so embryonic at this stage that not every mustering or specialisation even has a reserve manager yet, but it's on a slow road to try and fill that. We finally have CERCAT 5 being presented to promotion boards and actually getting PPRs. It used to be a case of you applied for a job, and if the job was above your rank, that was how you got promoted. Whereas now they're actually going to the promotion boards to see if they're worthy. I think what it's leading to with the career management, though, is, as we talked about, where do our reserves need to work? There's a lot more conversations now around, sorry, I don't want you working there, I need you to work over here. And so although we talk about CERCAT 3 in particular being very much a volunteer employee, it's not working like that, in fact. We're starting to have the conversations around, I know you'd love to do that, but I really need you to do this. For instance, I was voluntold what duty I will take on from VCDF group. And quite happy to do it, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a conversation about what you would like to do. And we finally have a dedicated CERCAT 5 person, and they're 06, but they're in charge of our communications, in dealing with our communications through ForceNet, etc. We're still playing catch-up in a lot of ways, And a lot of the stuff we're learning by the amalgam of that PERS branch, and a lot of the stuff we're picking up on the way Army does business. The Specialist Reserve introductory course is 7 days long, and it literally is here's the Air Force, here's the DPN, put your uniform on, a quick conversation on how to do stuff. We use it a lot for our, surgeons, JAGs, whatever the case may be, but it's a high-end course, 7 days, as I said, to get a uniform on them and get them out in the street. We're starting to look at our other options on how that might be transposed into both for mid-career entry and also even for our enlisted aviators. Some specialists that we might need in a particular job, you're not going to do anything other than that job, you're never going forward, you're never doing anything else. 7-day course, put a uniform on and sit at that desk. The better education piece of our people, as you saw on the graph from Lieutenant General Fox, a lot of our serving SERCAT 3 and 5 members are on the right-hand side of the scale when it comes to the age demographic. We're trying to start that conversation, and those people that roll out of a mid-career sergeant level, flight lieutenant, squadron leader level of please come back and do some reserve work, because at the moment something like 70% of that age group do not serve in SERCAT 3 or 5 and have no propensity to do so whatsoever. So we're trying to repair that communication piece and get them excited about taking up reserve work. The elusive ServOpD, I think I'll leave that one because we've talked about it enough today. In my other role, from a SERCAT 3 perspective, so my DG Res Air Force is only 50 days. I also work inside a VCDF group for the Strategic Mobilisation Plan and work inside Preparedness and Mobilisation Branch. Part of that gives me sight into Jobs and Skills Australia, and so to answer some of the questions from before about what are we doing and how are we doing it, there's some great conversations happening across defence and government about skills recognition and being able to take people off the street mid-career, do nothing but a defence conversion, essentially, and put them on the tools. Out of that conversation, PMNC and the National Preparedness piece, they also had their first conversation last Monday, and I was privy to that meeting with about 50, 60 industry leaders, is the resilience of the nation and what would your company do if... and they started off with a COVID-like response, and then that was an escalation, and there were discussions around what are the barriers to you achieving your job as it gets more difficult in this continuum of conflict. And I want to say about 90% of those participants identified the requirement for synergies across federal, state and local government levels, both for us all to act together, but in particular skills recognition. And in how that they cannot employ people to drive across the country without either having to change drivers, change a truck, or change the way the load is tied down because of different state rules, which is just ridiculous. So it was quite enlightening to see that we aren't the only ones living this problem. Industry is living the same problems that we are. And of course, we have the difficult problem in that we have to abide by those the state requirements. So a lot of our people are trained to actually cross the state lines. So if we can get a better synergy between all of those, it would make our lives a whole lot easier. Modularised training options, I think, speaks for itself. The SERCAT 3 or 5 can, little chunks, I suppose, from time away from work to enable them to take up training options. The third one is somewhat altruistic in my approach, civil defence training options, and things I'm starting to think about of both, again, from a national perspective, because our skill shortages, again, the problems they have are the problems we have. So if we were to look at, for instance, airfield operators, it's a Cert 3 training available through TAFE College. Should we as Defence provide that as a training option? And then instead of having ROSO into the permanent service, into SERCAT 6 and 7, why don't we just double the ROSO and say, here's your SERCAT 3 and 5, leave you in the region that we recruited you from and let them operate the airfield or fill the fuel truck or do whatever the case may be. And then only in time of need do we say you need to get that uniform back on, or the Defence Force will be rolling through here and they'll know how to operate with us. It's one of the things I've started to look at, and I know it, as I say, it will also support from a national endeavour. Reintroduction of university squadrons for Air Force. Again, though, we talked about the lack of facilities. I don't think it's something we can go alone with. I'm meeting with 8 Brigade later this month to talk about the options for us occupying the same space. And whether or not Navy want to come in along on that journey. But I'm opening up the conversation with Air Force, and a lot of people have, when I talk about the options to have 8 Brigade provide initial military training for all 3 services across the nation, particularly in regional areas. And of course, everyone's like, Air Force trained by Green, really? And I see no reason why we can't. The last one is, the fourth one is talk about the UK model. Again, they're doing some interesting stuff in that contractors awarded an enormous contract are required to pony up so many reservists to undertake service. Now, people will say, well, I know I've heard the argument about, but if we go to war, who are they going to work for, the contractor or for the Defence Force? And I really look at it, though, as quite potentially that we get to use their specialist, their deep special knowledge of about a particular, shiny widget we've just bought. That contract might only require them to serve up reservists for 5 years. But what it does is helps us introduce the product, etc. And I just think they've got a clever way of ensuring that they can bring objects into service and get a better reserve CIRCAT 305 workforce to help them out doing it. That's essentially how Air Force is starting to approach the problems we have. A lot of it's done through PERS branch. I try and keep the synergies between my other reserve roles tucked in there so that it's from a national perspective as well as an ADF perspective, not necessarily just Air Force. And I'll take money, CJC. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Go, my friend.
Training for young people wanting to join the Air Force Reserve. How are we going to go about expanding the Air Force Reserve to take untrained, trainable young people?
Depending on what you're trying to achieve, large numbers, etc. It was during COVID 2020. We had what I call the Father's Day weekend, where the government of the day looked at how the nation was shutting down, and they put us to work that Father's Day weekend to say, we want 10,000 people to go through the front door of the ADF over the next 12 months. And we pulled a lot of our training apart. All 3 services sat down that weekend. We pulled a lot of our training apart and developed courses, both in the initial military training and the initial employment training, that enabled us to say, you want 1,000 people, then my training is probably going to be this long. If you want 2,000 people, my training is probably going to be that long. So it depends on the numbers we need at the time on what does the product look like that comes out the door, and what risk will the workforce that has to manage them carry. And I think that will vary upon mustering, specialisation, etc., of what you possibly can achieve. What do you need to be safe? I've got the follow-up question with the French, for instance. I'd be very interested to see how many unauthorised discharges they have after training someone for just 12 days. Safety has to be paramount, and we know that. So I'll be very interested to see how it works for them. Does that answer your question?
French rifle, so
Dr. Habsburger. If you don't know, this man saved my life twice.
Greg, I understand that
In Melbourne, and I don't know about other states, but in Melbourne, 2 of the universities run aviation training courses. One of them's down at Point Cook. I would have thought that was an ideal area to grab hold of some of those people who are doing the aviation training actually on a Air Force base.
It is one of our options for recruitment. Some of those people are actually under training for the other airlines. The beauty of the Jobs and Skills Council membership, for instance, from the aviation one I sit on, Qantas are there, Rex are there, Virgin are there. It's a great conversation starter when I have, what if I took all of the pilots out of Wagga and said, sorry Rex, you can't have them, we need them. And it is a great conversation starter for people to start thinking about the issues at hand. We do try and attract some of those people, but as I said, most of them are already spoken for. The issue across aviation training at the moment is cost. So you'll find those people that are at those schools and can afford that training already have something in mind. Quite possibly, Air Force has already said no to as well, for some other reason.
Thanks. We've got another question here online. I think there's more to the question. There's more text to come. Major General Gobson is aggressively seeking 2,000 people to go on CFTS contracts, ServOpC. RAF, the Royal Australian Air Force, requires a vacant CERCAT 7 to be available in order to fill via CFTS. Is there any chance this policy will be continued? Changed. Yeah,
continue.
That's the thrust of the question. Yeah.
I might throw to you, Tish, because I'm not up to date on the PERS management, but I thought that was a business rule, that as a contract needs to fill a vacancy. The simple fact is, I think 2,000 jobs, it's climbing as we go. Anyone want to go higher? I'll go 2.5 over there. It appears that the hollowness is there, such that if you want a full-time gig, you can have a full-time gig, and there will be a vacancy that they can hold you against.
Yeah. And there's another one here. Based on Major General Laidlaw's comments today implying the need for more people to execute, I'm not sure whether that's the right word, more people to boost potential DSR reserve outcomes, any chance your area will boost in reserve size to support? Surely CAF would approve. Approve? Question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I said, the idea of looking at our structures in building CERCAT 3, 5, 6 and 7 across all of our units, I think is the way of the future. I don't see us having en masse reserve bodies like the Army do. I just can't see us having a 2-div style reserve workforce.
I don't think the thought is that it would be quite that big, but it's certainly there is an Air Force and an Navy appetite for not only an initial pathway, but an operational reserve effect, unlike what you have now. So moving beyond individuals.
Yes, sir. Yep.
That all needs permanent force capabilities.
And I would see that in the combat support side of the house. So how can I have the French model of a bunch of airfield aviators to protect the flight line? How could I have a heap of truck drivers to deliver fuel, etc.? So it'll all be those combat support effects, which I think you could get quite quickly through a recruitment program for the enlisted aviator.
Perhaps follow up before I might
Yes.
on Brigadier Challoner just to talk for a moment about. You touched on the common training, like for example.
Yes.
A brigade involved in the training RAF. Brett, did you want to say a word to that?
So, ladies and gents, hello, Brett Challoner, I work for General Laidlaw. There was a few interesting comments made by Fritz, but also questions raised about training and training an ab initio workforce coming through. There has been a degree of work that's been done on that through the review. And while we're obviously pre-decision on the review itself and the recommendations, I think regardless of what the outcome is, it is likely that we will generate an ADF reserve training system. And that will be designed by the Australian Defence College and the ADF Training Centre, which in and of themselves have probably some capacity issues at the moment. So it'll be very heavily supported by the 3 services and their training elements in particular. And it would probably be no surprise, linking to Fritz's point earlier, that Army has the most mature reserve training system, and therefore we've been talking heavily with the G7, with Forces Command, and in fact with Aaron Hassel and 8 Brigade about how we might do that, and indeed how we might pull both some of their current system across the 5 domains, but also through the work that Aaron and his team have been doing, how we might evolve so that we can sort of posture for scaling, expansion, or dare I say it, mobilisation at the point of need. But suffice to say, we're going to design an ADF reserve training system, and Fritz's wishes may well come true sooner than later.
Thanks, Brett, and thanks, Fritz. And I think to tie together what we've heard in the last few presentations, we've got a whole range of blue sky, no pun intended, thinking going on around how we can get after specific capabilities, niche organisational skills that we need through not being confined to the lanes that we've been accustomed to operating in the past, finding opportunities that will help everybody across the space, across all 5 domains, to get the part-time force we need with not only the skill sets we've become accustomed to seeing, but in greater abundance, but also entirely new skills and specialisations. So that's really encouraging. And of course, it's all supported by the work that Brett and Doug and Mero have been doing in terms of the review process.